Recently, my son rang up from Singapore and he wanted to know what memories we had of our childhood, because he wanted to get together a little folder for our granddaughters, because he thought we never really get a chance to talk about things like that. It really sort of caught us out a bit. I don't know what memories you have from your childhood, but one of my happiest memories were of holidays that I spent on my Uncle Ivor's farm at Easter time. He lived in a very isolated area of the Brecon Beacons. The farm had no electricity, and the water came from the little stream which came down from the top of the mountains. But I loved it there. I remember one Easter, it actually snowed, and I went with him on the tractor. He usually would have taken 2 sheepdogs with him, Fly and Fan, but the snow in the valley was too deep for them to walk. So we went on the tractor, right up to the top of the mountain. But the top of the mountain, the snow had been blown away, and the sheep were all sheltering under the walls and under the trees. But as soon as they heard his voice, they came running, because they knew he had hay and he would feed them. Another time I remember coming down off the mountain through one of the meadows, and there was a little gully by the side of the hedge, and suddenly my uncle disappeared down this gully. And when I looked over, I could see a sheep upside down with its legs up in the air. And he picked it up and put it on his shoulders, and he carried it back up. It was very steep, and he could have fallen and injured himself. But he knew he had to rescue that sheep, because amazingly it looked as if it was dead. But as soon as he set it down and held it in place, the blood must have drained away from its head or something, but it recovered very quickly, and it was amazing that it wandered off and joined the rest of the flock and looked totally unharmed. And my third memory that I told my son about was of the orphaned lambs which used to be kept in the kitchen in a cardboard box by the side of the coal fire. And I used to bottle feed them. And I used to love doing that and feeling their nice woolly, wiry coats. It was lovely. And I always called one of the orphan lambs Mary. I expect you can understand why. But when I came back the following year, I could never tell which one was Mary. I couldn't tell one sheep from another. But Uncle Ivor always knew which one was Mary, because he knew each one of those sheep. And all those memories remind me of the Good Shepherd, who feeds us, who rescues us when we are in trouble, and who knows us through and through. But let's look more deeply at the I am passage in John 10. I am was a provocative statement to make. I am is the name for God that he revealed to Moses at the burning bush. And by using these words, Jesus was identifying himself as one with God, which the Jews would consider blasphemy, punishable by death. The Good Shepherd cares deeply for his sheep, and Jesus declared that his purpose in coming to this world is that his sheep may have life, and life in all its fullness, secure in God's love, free of guilt from sin, pardoned through God's grace, a treasured member of God's family. And isn't that what we all desire? Jesus goes on to contrast the way the Good Shepherd protects his sheep with the paid worker who has no emotional attachment to the flock and will abandon them in the face of danger. The Good Shepherd will do all that he can to keep his sheep safe, even if it puts his own life in danger. The threat from wolves was very real in Israel at this time, and being a shepherd was a perilous job. They were often seen as ritually unclean and treated as outcasts. It was no coincidence that the angel brought the good news of Jesus' birth first of all to the shepherds, the lowest of the low. Their low status didn't stop the Good Shepherd from doing his utmost for his beloved flock, even if it cost him his life. I was talking to an ex-farmer in Linking Lives the other day, and he told me that he hated sheep and wouldn't stock them. So I asked him why. And he said they were nasty, smelly, stupid animals who always got caught in the brambles or fell down hills or pushed through a gap where they shouldn't go, and then half the others followed. And I thought, isn't that typical of so many people today? They're anxious for fame, money, power, or just an easy life with no responsibilities. But even when they do achieve what they think they want, they often end up disillusioned and feel abandoned. Are these the ones who followed the hired hands that Jesus talked about? Others may have become absorbed in their own interests, gardening, holidays, family, or even if all our energy goes into the upkeep of the church buildings. There's nothing wrong in any of these, unless they put these hobbies above listening for and obeying the Good Shepherd's voice, calling them to follow him. Jesus goes on to speak of another flock of sheep whom he must bring to join the original. These sheep are commonly accepted as the Gentiles. That's you and me. The shepherd's work is not yet finished. There are more sheep to be brought into that united flock. Are we content just to be part of the flock? Or are we ready to play our part in bringing more people into the fold? just take a moment to think, who can you draw into the flock today or this week? Jesus ends by speaking of his death, which was soon to come. He declares that he willingly gives up his life because the Father has planned this as the only way that we can be reunited with God. Jesus is not a passive victim of injustice, but actively working to bring about God's plan. No one but Jesus is untouched by sin and loving enough to accept, for our sake, the death that we all deserve, so we, his sheep, can be saved. So how thankful we should all be for Jesus' love and self-sacrifice. He also speaks of his resurrection, but it is beyond the understanding of the crowd. Some rejected it completely and said he was mad, but others remembered his teaching and his miracles and continued to follow him, struggling to understand. And there are times when we struggle too to understand, even today. So what about us? What does it mean for us? Are we more concerned with our comfort and security? Or do we put following Jesus above our own selfish wants? Will we set aside time for worship God, not just on a Sunday morning, but privately throughout the week? Do we study his word to discover his will and act on it? Do we speak to God and listen to him in prayer? Not just to bring our requests, but to deepen our relationship with him. As John challenges us in his first letter, will we respond to God's loving, willing sacrifice of his Son for us, you and me, with action? We may not succeed in following God's will all the time, but he knows when we have tried, and he honors it and strengthens us to serve him more and more. And therefore, we can confidently come to God as he invites us to his table, if we have listened to the voice of the Good Shepherd and followed him. Each of us has to make a choice. Will we follow the call of the world or the Good Shepherd who has given up his life for us? The decision is yours. Amen. Our next hymn, The Lord's My Shepherd, in Mission Praise 1008.